We begin today's show with more on the death and prosecution of Internet freedom activist Aaron Swartz, who killed himself last Friday. At the time of his death, he was facing up to 35 years in prison and a $1 million fine if convicted at trial for using computers at MIT to download millions of academic articles provided by the nonprofit research service JSTOR. Aaron Swartz was 26 years old. At the age of 14, he co-developed Really Simple Syndication, or RSS, the key component of much of the web's entire publishing infrastructure. By the time he was 19, he had co-founded a company that would merge with Reddit, now one of the country's most popular websites. He also helped develop the architecture for the Creative Commons licensing system and built the open library. Aaron Swartz's death has prompted an outpouring of frustration and anger at U.S. prosecutors. On Capitol Hill, Democratic Representative Zoe Lofgren of California has introduced a bill dubbed Aaron's Law to modify the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act by decriminalizing violations of terms of service agreements. Republican Congressman Darrell Issa, chair of the House Oversight Committee, is launching a probe into the possible prosecutorial overreach in this case. At Aaron's funeral, his father blamed prosecutors for his son's death, saying he was, quote, killed by the government. Earlier, his family released a statement saying, quote, Aaron's death is not simply a personal tragedy. It is a product of a criminal justice system rife with intimidation and prosecutorial overreach. Decisions made by officials in the Massachusetts U.S. Attorney's Office and at MIT contributed to his death.
On Wednesday night, the United States Attorney for the District of Massachusetts, Carmen Ortiz, broke her silence about the case. In a written statement, she wrote, quote, this office's conduct was appropriate in bringing and handling this case. The career prosecutors handling this matter took on the difficult task of enforcing a law they had taken an oath to uphold and did so reasonably, unquote. Ortiz said her office offered Aaron a plea bargain of 6 months in prison. When the case first came to light, Ortiz was quoted saying, stealing is stealing whether you use a computer command or a crowbar and whether you take documents, data, or dollars. Ortiz issued the statement a day after her husband used Twitter to fire back at his wife's critics. Tom Dolan, an executive with IBM, wrote, quote, truly incredible that in their own son's obit they blame others for his death and make no mention of the 6-month offer, he tweeted. In a moment, we'll be joined by Aaron Swartz's girlfriend. But first, let's turn to Aaron Swartz in his own words. This is part of a speech he delivered last May in Washington, D.C., when he explained the challenges he sees the Internet facing.
There's a battle going on right now, a battle to define everything that happens on the Internet in terms of traditional things that the law understands. Is sharing a video on BitTorrent like shoplifting from a movie store? Or is it like loaning a videotape to a friend? Is reloading a web page over and over again like a peaceful virtual sit-in or a violent smashing of shop windows? Is the freedom to connect like freedom of speech or like the freedom to murder?
Aaron Swartz speaking last May. To watch the full speech, you can go to our website at democracynow.org. For more, we're joined by Taryn Steinbrückner-Kaufman. She's Aaron Swartz's partner, as well as the founder and executive director of SumOfUs.org. That's SUMofUs.org, a global movement for corporate accountability. This is her first television interview since Aaron's death. We'll also be speaking with Alex Stamos in California at Stanford University, Chief Technology Officer of Artemis Internet, a computer security and forensics expert. He planned to testify at Aaron Swartz's trial. During the upcoming trial, he would have been the chief defense witness. And we did invite representatives from the U.S. Attorney's Office and MIT to join us, but they declined. We welcome you both to Democracy Now! Taryn, let us begin with you. First of all, our condolences on the loss of Aaron. Aaron committed suicide last Friday. The funeral was just 2 days ago, and Taryn, it was you who found him. He hung himself in your Brooklyn apartment that you shared. Taryn, talk about Aaron. Talk about who he was and what he wanted, and the effect of this upcoming trial.
Well, Aaron was the person most dedicated to fighting social injustice of anyone I've ever met in my life, and I loved him for it. He used to say, I used to say, well, why don't we do this thing? It'll make you happy. And he would say, I don't want to be happy. I just want to change the world. Open access to information was one of the causes that he believed in, but it was far from the only one. He fought for, during the course of this 2-year ordeal, he led the fight against SOPA, the Internet Censorship Bill, which no one thought could be defeated when it was first introduced, and which Aaron and millions of others together managed to fight back. And he did that all while under the burden of these bullying and false charges. He was just the funniest, most lovely person. He loved children. He loved reading out loud. That was one of his favorite things. He loved David Foster Wallace. He started trying to read me Robert Caro's biography of Lyndon Johnson out loud from the first volume. We didn't get that far because it's very, very long. One of his favorite books was Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality, a fanfic, and we would read it to each other as chapters came out online.
And could you talk a little about what he went through, his initial reaction to the arrest and this zeal of the prosecutors in Massachusetts to go after him on the downloading of these JSTOR research articles?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't with him. We didn't start dating until a few weeks before the indictment was announced publicly, which was several months after his initial arrest. He tried really hard to wall it off. It was obviously very stressful for him, but he tried to keep his friends and family as much as possible sort of isolated from this. He was very good at protecting other people. He was very distressed by the fact that the prosecution had called 2 of his closest friends as witnesses at the grand jury, and so he tried to protect everyone else by not giving us any information that would warrant being called as witnesses. He felt, the whole thing was just this big mistake, and he hoped that the prosecutor's office would realize it, that they didn't, he had done nothing illegal. I mean, as he put it as press release, in the very few press releases and work that he did around this, he likened it to charging somebody for borrowing too many books from the library, which, all of the articles he had the right to access individually. The only confusion here was that he had just accessed a lot of them. And he hoped the prosecutors would see the injustice and the unfairness of what they were doing, but they weren't interested in that. They weren't. Steve Hyman and Carmen Ortiz's office were interested in winning. They were interested in a notch on their belt. They were interested in taking a scalp, but they weren't interested in justice. They weren't interested in, does it actually make sense for this young man to be labeled a felon for the rest of his life and to go to prison for years and years?
Taryn, we're going to break, and when we come back, we'll also be joined by the person who would have been the chief defense witness in this case. Taryn Steinbrückner-Kaufman is our guest, Aaron's partner, head of someofus.org, and we'll be joined by Alex Stamos, who would have testified at the trial to explain what it is that Aaron did and was fighting for. Usually, our next guest is a consultant for corporations, protecting them from break-ins on the internet. Today, he will talk about what that means in Aaron's case. This is Democracy Now! Back in a minute. Thanks so much for watching this report from Democracy Now!, your daily independent global news hour. We don't accept advertising or corporate funding, but rather rely on donations from viewers like you. Please make your contribution by visiting democracynow.org. We need your support today to keep bringing you this hard-hitting, in-depth reporting.